I feel like lots of people have already joined, so let's get started. Thanks to everyone for joining and for coming on. We're gonna save most questions until the end, but feel free to put them in there whenever, and I'll try to jot them down as we go. Um, Rachel, thank you for joining from New Mexico. We're excited. We've been trying to make this happen for a little while, so it's exciting to see it all come together.
Yeah, I'm so grateful and shout out to our comms manager, Marcus, for pushing and pushing. He really is the best. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful this happened.
He's great. But I think probably a lot of folks know the organization and they know what you do, but for anyone who's watching who may not be familiar, do you want to talk a little bit about Indigenous Women Rising? Tell folks a little bit about the organization, how it started. I know you founded it. It's been over 10 years, right? It's been a while. That's amazing. So yeah, we would love to just hear your origin story.
The villain origin
The
story. Just
villain
kidding.
origin story.
Yeah, back in 2013, my daughter was about a year and a half old, and I got my first ever paid campaign job working the Respect Albuquerque Women campaign. And this was a citywide campaign to defeat a 20-week abortion ban within the city limits because Albuquerque houses one of the very few third trimester abortion clinics in the country. And during that time, I found out I was pregnant, and this was a very much wanted pregnancy and didn't go the way that I wanted. And I had just got into grad school. I'm in this new job. I have a 1.5-year-old. Um, yeah, the pregnancy just didn't go the way I wanted it to. And around 13 or 14 weeks, I went into labor and I get to the ER and I am fat shamed. I'm told that I've had enough pain management. I don't need any more. Um, I was left to bleed out on my sheets with the door open so anyone passing by could see that I'm bleeding. My husband had my daughter and was trying not to freak out. And when he left to take my daughter to her grandma's, the time it took him to go across the city and come back, I still had not been seen. And the OBGYN, when she finally came in, she was incredibly compassionate and was like, "We're
Mhm.
going to make sure you're not in pain anymore." And I remember being in so much pain that I was losing my vision. I was just like begging
Jesus.
her, make this pain stop. Like, just take everything out. I don't care. I don't ever want to be in this much pain again. And then I fell asleep. I had a dilation curettage or DNC,
Mm,
a very common abortion procedure that is life-saving, evidently. I developed an opioid addiction after, and it wasn't because I needed an abortion. It wasn't because of this missed pregnancy. It
mm,
was because of the dehumanizing treatment that I received from the care providers in the emergency room,
mm,
and being told that I'm too fat to receive any more pain management. And I grew up in a very Catholic but very Pueblo traditional home. And
mm,
so it felt really lonely and isolating to have gone through this experience. And I've always been quote unquote pro choice.
yeah.
I'm very proudly pro abortion. I do not subscribe to pro choice, but I grew up in that kind of household. And it, even though I grew up with like Democrats, or my parents are Democrats, and very Catholic, we still didn't talk about that. When I was
Mm,
breastfeeding my daughter, I was told to cover up because men were coming over to the house. So it was still a very patriarchal kind of environment that I grew up
mm,
in. And we didn't talk about, when you're pregnant, you might have more yeast infections or more BV, more instances of
right.
BV. So, this was definitely not an experience, that I felt comfortable talking to my family members with, but I knew we had to share these stories because I felt like inside I was just falling apart. I was like, "I cannot be the only one." And so that's where Indigenous Women Rising started. It was really just a way to tell my abortion story and
Mm,
get other Native folks together to tell our own stories using our own words. And that
mm,
is so important to let folks from marginalized communities know we can use our own words. I think a lot of times in our movement, we have to have this like social justice warrior terminology.
right.
Um, and even a term like pro abortion or pro choice doesn't really resonate within our communities. And so just being able to get people to be neutral about abortion is
Mm,
just as important and just as valuable as getting someone to 100% agree with being pro-abortion. And so, yeah, over the years, Indigenous Women Rising has evolved. I started learning how to lobby, have my own relationships with state legislators and our federal delegation. I was part of uh, Congressional District 1's youth committee when our governor was in Congress. I volunteered for multiple political campaigns and tried to make sure they were always talking about reproductive health in some way. Um, yeah, so that's how IWR started. We launched an abortion fund after getting some notoriety, after winning an award from the Kellogg Foundation for
mm,
making our breasts, or I'm sorry, making our breasts, making our traditional dresses more breastfeeding friendly.
oh,
And
cool.
that was in 2017. And that was one of the coolest projects we've ever done that I definitely want to bring back for our emergence
Yeah,
fund. But yeah, we got recognition for that. And I got DMs from people saying, okay, you do breastfeeding support, but I need help with an abortion. And that's
right.
when I started looking into abortion funds and I realized there is no abortion fund dedicated to Native people. So we launched that, the first Native-led, Native-centered abortion
I
fund in
know.
2018. Um, Now we have our doula fund. It launched in 2020 after Loveless Women's Hospital instituted a policy during the pandemic that said that Native women, specifically going into labor and delivery, and have an address affiliated with a zip code on a reservation was
Mhm,
flagged for separation from their baby at birth. So we started a midwifery fund so people who are pregnant could choose the provider that they want in the setting that they want because
mm,
they're in fear of being separated from their babies, which is a very old colonial tactic. Um,
yeah.
and and spreading that misinformation that Native people are more likely to spread disease. So
Mm,
we've tried to meet the moment in reproductive health from a culturally sensitive perspective that might that some orgs or some folks in our reproductive health and justice movement might not agree with.
mm,
Um, but that's okay because we feel really confident that we're doing it in a way that suits what our people need because our movement doesn't provide enough
yeah.
support or attention to specifically Indigenous people.
That's incredible. That's a lot. You're doing a lot. That's like not I feel like you just described like 10 organizations worth of work, right? Like you're doing a tremendous amount.
Thank you.
I would love to hear more about um what what you mean when you say like there's some pieces that maybe like the mainstream pro-choice movement might not agree with. Like, is it the language that you were talking about? Like, what does that look like for you, and how do you push back against that?
Yeah, terms like pro-choice or
Yeah.
abortion on demand without apology.
Mm,
We have because of our cultural and traditional beliefs, we can't have our stories, our traditions, our language without elders. And considering that our elders, many of them come from the boarding school era, they come from being drafted into the Vietnam War and PTSD and like all of these policies. I mean, it wasn't legal for us as Native people to practice our religion until 1972 or 1973. And so being separated from those things and from our culture and our families for generations, we have a lot of conversations and healing to do. And it doesn't help when we're telling our elders, if you don't believe this, you're not with us.
Mm,
And that's not true. It's just using terminology that they might be more familiar with. For example, like with the abortion on demand without apology, that's something that I believe in, but that's not something my grandma, who raised three boys on her own, and did her best to be an educated woman in the 70s and 80s, an educated Native woman, that might not be terminology that she agrees with
mhm,
necessarily, but she does agree with um, a more thoughtful conversation about choice and about the lack of support for teen moms, or the lack of support for breastfeeding, or the lack of options for birth control. So all of those things can lead into a conversation about abortion without using stuff that the pro-choice movement uses. And so
mm,
it's really just taking the time to break the terminology down and figure out where that happy medium is. And this isn't like arguing with anti-choice people, which is not something
yeah,
that we engage in, because what the fuck do they know? But
yeah,
these conversations are more integrated with oral traditions on how to start a family, traditional gender roles, whatever they might be. I've learned that part of my village was a gay society, and I had no idea that that was a thing.
mm,
So there are so many teachings and opportunities to learn from elders about their perspective of family creation and how we take control of our fertility, that has nothing to do with the quote unquote pro choice movement.
yeah.
And when we talk about, like, for example, a few years ago, we had the Satanic Temple come to New Mexico and offer, it was
Right.
nuts.
Yeah.
And we felt like it was really disrespectful to the people that we've tried for years to have
Mm,
relationships, because they are very Catholic.
right.
And here's a satanic temple talking about abortion, and we're mostly known for our abortion fund. So that might
Yeah.
have caused some distrust there. And we were essentially ridiculed, and the Satanic Temple leadership was honestly like pretty condescending and
Oh
racist to
no.
us. So, like, having those experiences, um, and knowing that Catholic folks in our state can be on our side, and they're interrupting that. Like, that's just one example of um, like a colonial strategy just kind of
Yeah.
dropping into New Mexico to provide abortion without really consulting with repro health and justice orgs, abortion funds on the ground, to get a better understanding of the landscape and offer like resources or collaboration, and just
Mm,
assuming that they know best. Because our elders and our Native communities as a whole already have generations of experience with outside communities coming and telling us, we have a better religion, we have a better
yeah.
way of life, your way of life is uncivilized. Like, we already have enough of that, and that was just like another form of it. All
Mm,
of that, hopefully that answers your question, but those are like some
that's
examples
great.
of how we're trying to maintain our or trying to live by our values around reproductive health and justice, and also maintain and cultivate better relationships with our elders, because
Mhm.
we need them to continue on our traditions and our language.
Yeah. No, that's amazing, and it perfectly answers my question, and I'm sure I'm wondering if this brings up the same thing for Kylie, but I feel like what you said about the Satanic Temple coming in, it also feels like part of this broader issue that we hear from a lot of abortion funds, a lot of local groups where national organizations or campaigns will come in and sort of really damage like relationships that have been built over time on the ground because of this assumption that they know better, that the national messaging is, inherently superior to whatever like messaging and relationships have been going on for years, have been, being built. So it sounds very familiar. Kylie, did you want to anything?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, well, first, it's so good to talk to you again, Rachel. I feel like this is the first time I've talked to you since I moved over from Jezebel to abortion every day. So it's so good to chat again. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that stuff with like the Satanic Temple stuff, like they are just kind of like this publicity stunt kind of thing. And like they pop up like with all of these
Love.
random like lawsuits or whatnot, but those obviously never go anywhere. And it's kind of just, yeah, it doesn't really materially help anyone. And but yeah, I'm sorry I got to deal with them. But yeah, I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about, some of the barriers to access that Indigenous patients face and how those barriers have changed or not changed, since
Mm.
jobs.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first and foremost, Roe is the bar on the floor. Maybe it's in hell. Um, it is the bare frickin' minimum. It was crumbs, and I am not accepting crumbs for my people or for anybody. Um, Roe v. Wade essentially was not a reality for Native people. The Hyde Amendment, for folks who don't know, the Hyde Amendment is a rider on every appropriations bill that says no federal funds for abortion except for cases of incest, rape, or life of the pregnant person or life of the mother.
Mhm.
And IHS, because it primarily serves or it only serves Native people who are affiliated with a federally recognized tribe, are like the Hyde Amendment is incredibly racist. The senator whose namesake is the Hyde Amendment, like said very clearly, and it's in the Senate archives, that Black people, poor people, they shouldn't be getting pregnant anyway if they can't afford children, and already knew that these are the folks who are going to suffer the most. But when it comes to Indian Health Services and the Hyde Amendment and Dobbs, um, not only would it be incredibly hard and risky to provide abortion care for people, for Native people, um, there's also the lack of OB/GYNs who serve. For example, the Indian Health Service hospital that I grew up with, which is located in Acoma, Pueblo.
Sorry. Sorry. Oh my God, my
That's
phone
okay.
fell. Ignore me.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's called Acoma Laguna Canoncito, or ACL. And it was recently bought out by Acoma Pueblo because the feds. But yeah, it doesn't have a 24-hour, it never had a 24-hour emergency care division. If someone was having a pregnancy complication, it's not like they could go to IHS to do, a cesarean section or miscarriage management. They would have to go 30 miles west to Grants or 50 miles east to Albuquerque in order to get that kind of pregnancy related care. And that's not uncommon across the country where Indian Health Service hospitals are. So it's not just a lack of access because it doesn't provide the care or because of politics and the budget. It's also a barrier when OBGYNs or even general surgeons don't have obstetric training to be able to provide pregnancy related care. They do have a midwife, a certified nurse midwife, or a CNM to do birth control consultations and things like that. But when it comes to someone who needs emergent care, that's not possible. And considering the social determinants of health, with Native people, that's also a huge issue when we're looking at geography, education, location, your zip code, all of these things, which shouldn't matter, they do. And for Native folks, I mean, we're among the poorest and most rural in the country. And so that's that was before Dobbs. And then after Dobbs, it hasn't changed that much. The thing that's really disconcerting to me is the huge amount of misinformation out there about emergency contraception and
Mm,
IUDs, abortifacients, um, even tribal leaders perpetuating some of these things, especially if they're in red states. I did an interview with Native America Calling last year, and the tribal liaison in, I believe, the governor's office in Oklahoma,
mhm,
was talking about how his tribal community doesn't have any abortions because nobody believes in abortion and nobody would ever want to have an abortion, when his state at the time was one of the states we served the most
wow.
in getting across state lines to get abortion care. So that just kind of shows like the lengths that folks will go to spread misinformation, or maybe they're in denial that
Mm,
people have abortions for many different reasons. And so I would also put the onus on Native men, um, that they are also a barrier to our people getting um, access to abortion care, because they absolutely could step in when their tribes contracts or negotiations are up with the federal government and say, hey,
mhm,
we want more reproductive health care beyond contraception. We want more breastfeeding support. We want more um, people or surgeons or doctors or whatever,
mm,
interns who have obstetric training at our Indian Health Service facilities, but they don't do that, and then
mm,
wonder why um, people are more sick or we have high maternal mortality rates. And so I also put the blame on tribal leaders for not considering reproductive health enough.
right. I mean, it seems like there is a lot of this attempt to divorce maternal health, divorce just general reproductive health from abortion care, or like you said, whether it's out of ignorance or denial. It's very, very common. I'm wondering how do you intervene in that kind of disinformation? What does that look like for you all? Like, is it possible that, because that disinformation is so incredibly ubiquitous, it's everywhere. It's something we talk a lot about, and I'm wondering if any particular strategies have worked for you.
Something I learned in lobbying is that legislators who are attorneys, who are doctors, they only want to hear from constituents who are in their same field. They want to hear from other attorneys or
Yeah.
other doctors or whatever, right? And
Mm,
so our strategy has been get some cis het native dudes who are pro abortion, who are down, for breastfeeding in public uncovered and don't sexualize breasts, to be
mm,
able to train them to talk about reproductive health, and have those conversations in the quote unquote the locker room, wherever
mm,
that might be. Right. In our traditional ceremonies, a lot of times it's very male exclusive. And so if the conversation ever comes up around sexual health, they're prepared to either shut down transphobia and homophobia. They're
mm,
prepared to educate people on the facts of abortion pills. They're prepared to educate other men on the benefits of breastfeeding and being a supportive partner. Um, and also consent, right? Like everything that we would want our partners, our sons to know about reproductive health in general.
mm,
Really, that strategy has been, how can we get dudes who want to help? And so with our tribal leaders, it's really important to me that I understand that I might not be the best messenger to carry that message to tribal leaders because I'm queer, because I'm
mm,
a woman. Maybe because I have tattoos, like that's a
Yeah.
really big thing for a lot of Native communities.
Mm,
That these cishet men who are traditional, who do know the language, who do understand cultural values, can portray that message on our behalf. And that
mm,
might be a strategy that the pro-choice movement might poo-poo on. Like, why are you
mm.
having men speak for you? It's really a way for there to be some kind of understanding. So when we all come together, that tension has lessened.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we have to get the work done. We have to do what we have to do. And I totally get it. I am wondering, and I promise Kylie, I'll let you hop in with the question. Um, I'm wondering with the abortion fund work that you all are doing, um, has that increased? Has the need and the services you've had to provide increased since Dobbs? What does that look like for you, just like as an organization and your budget and the amount of people that you're helping? Like how has that changed for you? What does that look like?
Yeah, with um so after Dobbs, there was an influx of donations, like rage donations, and it was
Yeah.
awesome. But as we know, it's gone down. And part and along with that increase in donations, there was also an increase in callers to the abortion fund because there was so much misinformation, or paywalls that kept people from getting the information they needed from reputable sources or what they would consider reputable sources. And um, the amount of folks looking for care, it hasn't necessarily gone down, but it's been pretty much the
Mhm,
same.
mm,
But we have had to decrease our budget. At first, it was
mhm,
50,000 a month. Then we've had to go down to 40,000. Now it's at about 30 to 35,000 a month. Um, over the last like year and a half. And so what we're also seeing is we don't just have our RAIN fund, which is our abortion fund,
mhm,
but we also have our solidarity fund, which is
mhm,
for non-native folks
mhm,
who are people of color. Any young person, no matter their ethnic background, 18 or younger,
mhm.
if they're undocumented, or unhoused, then they qualify for our solidarity fund. So that budget is about $15,000 a month. Um, but we're seeing our budget max out for solidarity funding.
Uh,
Um, and of course, the budget is smaller, so of course it would max out. But
yeah.
as we're trying to help as many people as possible, we're finding we're able to give less and less.
Mm,
Um, and it's really sad. It's really scary. I know that independent clinics were very hesitant in raising their prices, and they've had to do that in order to keep their business going. And for folks who don't know, independent clinics are the ones providing the most abortion care in this country, not Planned Parenthood. Um, so we really need to figure out how to support independent clinics as much as possible. And I know they were so hesitant and they really didn't want to raise their prices, but they had to. And that also and also with like federal cutbacks, whatever that might mean for states, that's putting more pressure on abortion funds to cover those gaps where insurance and
yeah.
Medicaid won't. So
Yeah. I consider that a good, I feel like that's a good moment to mention to folks who are watching now or who are gonna watch the recording later to donate to your local, independent, abortion clinic, to donate to Indigenous Women Rising, that there are all of these, please, I mean, there's just such an incredible amount of day-to-day work, that goes into this, but behind the scenes that, like, people are not hearing about, that is so incredibly vital, like yours. And so I hope that people who are able to give will do that.
we have a $2 million goal, fundraising goal by next summer. Um, we really want to be able to keep going. Sorry, that's a shameless plug, but we don't want to
No,
have
not
to
at all.
keep We don't want to have to keep decreasing our budget every month to be able to serve people. We don't want to have to tier our what we pay out again. For the last like 2-3 years, we've been able to pay out the majority, like pay in full the majority of procedures, with the exception of a few third try cases, which can range anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000. But for first and second try care, we've been able to cover the entire procedure, as well as airfare, hotel, gas, childcare, elder care, funeral home costs, to transport remains
Amazing.
for ceremonies, to cover all of those. And now we're getting to a point where we can't. And that cultural aspect, that cultural sensitivity, is one of the things that keeps people coming back to us to trust us, because that's something that other abortion funds don't cover.
Right. No, that's really important. Thank you for bringing that up. Kylie, did you want to hop in with anything?
Yeah,
Or
definitely.
Kylie had the cold, and it was, I have to say, it's very, Kylie is like a crazy person, just like constantly working through
Oh,
sickness and colds. So very much
no.
appreciative. I did not force Kylie to be here. Kylie wanted to be here.
No, that's so true. No, yeah, I'm just so annoyed because I had a cold like 2 weeks ago and got one again, which is annoying, but anyway, nevertheless. But, yeah, no, I'm so glad that you're able to be on this live stream and, like, plug the amazing work you do, because I know that's something you talked about, is how your work at Indigenous Women Rising is being shadow banned on social media. And, yeah, I was wondering, if you could tell us, like, what the latest with that is, how that kind of started, how you noticed it. And, we all know abortion content is being suppressed across the board on social media. And, how are you thinking of doing your work with with that happening?
Yeah, so for folks who don't know, our our Instagram account at Indigenous Women Rising started getting shadow banned after we posted something for Nakba back in May. And that we did not get any notification. There's a place where you can go into your settings and see what community violations there are, or community standard violations there are. We haven't violated anything. And so once that happened, we've been very pro-Palestine, and talking about that regularly. So that's when um, that shadow ban started. And I'm so grateful for Marcus's mentor, Aurea Bolaños Perea. She helped us see that if we get more people to engage, it could help us through the shadow ban. And unfortunately, we never knew when the shadow ban was coming. And so we would just try to post and get as much out as possible, post stories. It got to the point where we couldn't even follow new people, and people weren't able to see our content. And people even reported going to our profile and not being able to see any of our posts. And I was like, what the hell?
Craziness, yeah.
Um, and so we have made a big push across our newsletters. Blue Sky, please help us through the shadow ban. Working with Repro Uncensored has been a huge help. And being able to collaborate with other page on posts. Our other page is at Reproductive Sovereignty. So that has been really good to make sure that people get our information out, especially young people. Thankfully, we've been able to continue to receive DMs and collaborate on posts. We're hoping the shadow ban right now, we've been able to share stuff, so hopefully that stays for a while. Or as long as possible. But it's honestly given us an opportunity to really reevaluate which avenues we get information out at, and be more intentional about native newspapers and advertising. We just put out, or we just not put out, we had already put it out, but our ad in USA Today, we received the paper copy yesterday.
Very
And
cool.
we put out an ad in the Native American Heritage Month special edition, and it's so beautiful. The models are incredibly beautiful. And the landing page, shout out to Manasseh, who is so talented. I'm so proud of that ad. And so, yeah, like the shadow ban, for as crappy as it is, on
Mm.
the other hand, it's just given us a beautiful opportunity to get creative, and look at avenues we've never even explored. So this year has been a lot of media comms
Mm.
first.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And I'll make sure to put, we'll put, when we post this and send this to the list, we'll make sure to put all of your accounts so that people can go follow them and engage with them and, share stories so that we can help sort of like break through this a lot. But like, this is something we've covered before. This is something we've seen with abortion clinics and providers, aid access, anyone talking about abortion medication, literally same exact thing you're saying, where you go to search a particular profile, doesn't come up in the search bar. You go to a particular profile, those posts are gone, and there's very little in the way of information. You go and you ask, and you're not hearing anything back, or you're told sort of nonsense reasons for why content was taken down. But I'm really glad to hear that it's making you think about alternate sort of media routes. That's something that we've been talking about too, about um, what happens in the future if this gets worse and worse? What happens, we're an email newsletter. What happens if there is further suppression of speech? What happens if what we say over email becomes potentially criminal, right? Like, how do we build community with each other, and how do we make sure that we're getting these messages out to each other without relying on these huge social media platforms? I think it's going to end up being like just a tremendous thing um, in the future. We're already like very well into time. So if people have questions that they want to ask, please feel free. I know that Lauren wanted to know. Lauren says, I was surprised that New Mexico doesn't have more crisis pregnancy centers, but do you see that as a problem for your community? Is New Mexico one of the states that providing funds to the CPCs?
So I don't believe that New Mexico is a state that provides funds to CPCs, but they can categorize themselves as nonprofits. And so
Mm.
they still have to abide by the same state laws that we do with our Secretary of State. Um, Unfortunately, my choice for Albuquerque mayor didn't make the runoff, Alex U. Baez. He had mentioned that if he were to become mayor, he would be supportive of having an office of reproductive health in the mayor's
Mm.
office, since we do have a pretty good community of abortion care providers in New Mexico. CPCs are a problem no matter where they are, because fuck CPCs. And the way that they target college students, homeless people, Native people, and it's not just targeting them to quote unquote keep their baby. It's also religious proselytization, which is a gross colonial tactic. Um, but they are always a problem.
Mm.
There's an organization, I forget what they're called, and I'm so sorry. But they have a really good database of every CPC in every state across the country. And it's on the back of one of our zines that talks about what fascism is, like just a
Mm.
really brief review of what fascism is and how CPCs are dangerous
Yeah.
and what CPCs are. And so I feel like we are doing a pretty good job of educating people about the difference between a CPC and a legitimate healthcare clinic, whether or not they provide abortion care, and things to look out for. Um, Especially when our relatives come into the city to get healthcare. Like, don't be fooled by the free pregnancy testing or the free ultrasound. Like, you should go to actual medical professionals that are covered by your insurance and covered by Medicaid to get more information about your pregnancy. Um, but they're not. I mean, they're still dangerous. I stand 10 toes down that they are violent extremists. Um, and so we'll always, at the state legislature, we we gotta face them once in a while.
Yeah.
And they're also creeps. Oh my God. Like
Thank you.
they are creepy people. There's an
Creepy.
ED of New Mexico Alliance for Life. Her name's Elisa Martinez. She took pictures of me during a committee hearing on the webcast and like posted it to her Twitter and was
Oh,
like, look who's here. It's Rachel Lorenzo. I can see the back of her head. What is she typing? Like just weird, creepy stuff.
your
They are,
biggest fan.
I live rent free in their head
That's
for real.
great.
Um, so not only are they spreading misinformation, tricking people, they're creepy and they're stalkers.
They are very weird. Kylie wrote a great piece that we tagged to Halloween about, like, we don't talk nearly enough about how weird these people are, about how a couple of CPCs, when women have been arrested for the way that they disposed of their miscarriage remains, pregnancy outcomes, that these CPCs, the heads of CPCs, took custody of the fetal remains, named them, had a fucking public funeral, just
Daryl.
cuckoo, just bizarro, weirdo behavior. And these are the groups that state governments, federal government is saying that these can replace all of the clinics that they are defunding and running out of town. Like, they are working so hard to legitimize these places. They're working so hard to make it okay to funnel taxpayer dollars through these religious weirdo organizations. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it- we could have a whole separate live stream about what weirdos they are. It is too much, way too much.
Yeah, they're
Ugh.
gross.
Ugh.
Mm-mm.
I want to make sure, folks, if you have last questions, we're going to be here for another couple of minutes. But I want to make sure that I get all of my questions. And oh, can we talk about the attacks on midwives, actually, Rachel?
Yeah.
Because this is, it's something we wanted to bring up, and Kylie actually brought this up with me before, and we're seeing this in multiple states. We're seeing these attacks on midwives, both in the sense of sort of criminalization, like we've seen in Texas, but also this attempt to delegitimize the work that midwives are doing and that doulas are doing. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of midwives and doulas in Indigenous communities and sort of what the impact of those attacks has been or could be.
Yeah. So the role of Indigenous midwives, I want to be very clear. They should not have to be credentialed. If community trusts them, then they are a valid person to provide pregnancy related support, whether it's for birth or abortion, or no matter the outcome of the pregnancy. But the role has traditionally been, like, for example, with my Apache people. For folks who don't know, I am Mescalero, Apache, Laguna Pueblo, and Chicana. And Mescalero is where I'm enrolled. And with Apache people, like one of our most famous medicine women was Lozen, who delivered babies in wartime and was also known to have like very spiritual supernatural powers that helped her brother defeat the federal government in different battles. And that was like the 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 aura, I guess, of Apache, what we would call
Mm.
midwives. They had these supernatural powers, and women and girls inherently, once we hit puberty, I had a puberty ceremony, and we take on the gifts and the
Mm.
appearance of our creator, white painted woman, and also bringing life into the world and being able to control our destinies. and keeping our people in mind when we are taking control of our destinies. And that includes our fertility. If folks haven't read this, please go read this. It is required reading if you care about abortion access. It's Reproduction on the Reservation by Brianna
Yeah.
Theobald, I think. I think that's her name. I'm sorry if I butchered it.
That's
But
okay. We'll put it in the post when it goes out.
okay, cool. It required reading. It talks about how Crow women and Crow midwives, they had special ceremonies for birth and abortion, and they were not mutually exclusive. And of course, this cannot be applied to every Native community, but this is just a look at how threatened the federal government and the church was by midwives specifically, because they were empowering their women to take control of their bodies. And the stories that I grew up on of women taking control of their families by divorcing their husbands and sending them back to their mothers um, is is so beautiful, and we should continue that tradition, in my opinion. But yeah, there are Native communities all over the globe, Indigenous communities that have their own practices and are doing their best to hold on to what they have. And they have been criminalized. And in this country in particular, during this political time, they're being criminalized for assisting people through abortion. People are being criminalized in red states for aiding and abetting abortion, whatever that might look like. And of course, the people who are going to be targeted the most are Black and Brown people. Um, there's a long history of enslaved Africans helping each other with their fertility, whether it was abortion or giving birth, and the ways that they did that during slavery, during that period of history. So those traditions try to continue, but the tradition of the federal government being threatened by the power that midwives and helpers have is also very on brand for this country, because they put into policy in the 19th century ways for the federal government to funnel money to churches and to schools to shut down traditional midwives, force Native women to go into hospitals to give birth. And even into the 20th century, Native people were still giving birth at home. So that project was federally funded to wipe out Indigenous midwifery, whatever that looks like. And it didn't all just have to be about birth and abortion. It was also about medical management, menstrual health, puberty, family creation, conflict resolution, all of those things, right? That lead to healthy communities, but was being forced into a westernized medical system that had no regard for traditional belief systems, and even like using that as a way to turn Native communities against each other internally, which is a very old colonial tactic. Hell yeah, someone from Ruidoso. So close to Mescalero. I love Ruidoso. It's kind of racist, but it's very beautiful there.
There you go. You have a lot of fans in the audience. Um, Lee, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add or ask. I definitely want to know what you're thinking about next, Rachel. Like, what are you thinking about for 2026? What can people do to help the organization? Kylie, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, that's exactly what I would want to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, my goal is to get that $2 million. I want One of the things I'm really proud of is building an organization that people are like, "Can I come work for you?" And I'm like, "I wish I had the money." But
That's
I
amazing.
can't do this without staff. Um, and it's I think of like Planned Parenthood Southeast or some of the other badly managed Planned Parenthood affiliates, and how they have treated their workers so terribly. But these workers believe so much in reproductive health and reproductive justice, that they either continue to do the work or they figure out how to do it without getting paid, no matter how badly they're treated, which is so shitty. Like, no one should have to do that, especially in this movement of reproductive justice. But our people, we, especially on stolen land where we are having a hard time still trying to connect to our culture, our tradition, our language, and still trying to do this work, like that fundraising goal is what I have my sights set on, because I cannot do this work alone. One of my one of my, I don't know, managing
Yeah, that works.
philosophies, is that you should not need a college degree to work for IWR. You should not need a college degree to work in to make reproductive health accessible for everybody. And that means capacity building, that means training and professional development, all of those things. And that's what I want to provide for my staff, because we are all from the communities that we serve. And that is the way that we build trust with the people who are being vulnerable with us in their most vulnerable time, in their most like raw time, where if they could pay for this shit on their own and not tell anybody, they would. They would not
Yep.
come to complete strangers to ask for help. That is how like backwards our healthcare system is, and how backwards abortion care is approached, is such a taboo, separated thing from every other kind of healthcare. You can get a probe up your butt, but you can't get an abortion in the same hospital that
Yeah.
you take your kids to. Like, that makes no sense to me. And so that fundraising goal is what I have, is like, I want to be able to support my staff as much as possible. But I also want more community events. I want to meet more people who support us, and how can we work together? Um, and I firmly believe that if you have a passion, it can be connected to reproductive health. We have a tattoo artist on staff who is working with their community, their tattoo community, to do a fundraiser for us. We've had this incredible, like, I don't know, famous pie baker. She makes beautiful pies. She raffled off these beautiful pies for like $90 and did a teach-in on the history of
Oh, cool.
Thanksgiving in the Bay. Like, there are so many creative things that people have done. And I want to connect with those people and like have a discussion about how what they're passionate about is a reproductive justice issue. Even if it seems so disconnected, it really isn't. And those are like the fun things that I want to focus on. I know we got to focus on like shutting down CPCs and stopping bad legislation, but I'm also like driven by hope going into the new year. Like, thinking of Donald Trump giving Bill Clinton a blowjob, and then like the picture of him and Melania on the White House Twitter account saying, I don't know, some line from an Elvis Presley song or something. Like, that's in this shitty fascist moment, those are the like sparks of joy I have to hold on to continue to do this work.
No, fuck yeah. We are like in desperate need. All of it's important. So much important work to do. Being able to maintain that work is in large part dependent on joy and humor and fun, and being able to do this work with some happiness and proactiveness, and not like constant defensiveness and feeling downtrodden. So like I am 100% on board with all of that. And for folks who want to donate, I'm going to make sure to put all of the links in the post. And obviously, we understand not everyone is in the same financial position. If you can't donate, there's other ways to support this work. You can share it on social media. You can, talk it up to friends who maybe are in a better financial position, right? Like, there's lots and lots of ways that you can um, be helpful. And I would love for Abortion Every Day to help sort of facilitate IWR getting to that $2 million place. So I know that this community does really incredible things. I've seen it happen. I've seen you all raise a ton of money. I've seen you all create legislative change. And so, you know, let's try to do the best we can. Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time and for just sharing your brilliance and passion with us and for all of the, incredible work that you're doing every day. We're so grateful for you, so grateful for this conversation. I hope that we can do it again. Please consider this an open invitation to, come back whenever you'd like. Um, yeah, I'm just really thankful that we got to do this.
My phone is about to die, but yeah, I just
Oh,
want to say thank you so much, and it was so great to talk to you again.
Oh my gosh, I have so much love for both of you. I'm deep down, I'm like super nervous and fangirling because I love abortion every day. And I have
yay.
so much respect for both of you individually as humans, but abortion every day, I'm like, I tell all my staff, you better fucking go subscribe to it. That is part of your job.
Yes, yes. I love to hear it. Well, you're the best, and we'll do this again soon. Everyone who joined, thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad to be in a community with all of you, and we will see you again very soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.